Hope you're enjoying the video series with Crocoblock and everything we've done with JetEngine, but now let's take it a step further with JetSmartFilters. This is where we're going to add filters into our WordPress website, integrating with JetEngine, and we're now going to start filtering. Because we went and built like a blog archive. I mean, yes, I know I stuck it on the home page, but you could have stuck it on a blog template or any other page as well. But what if you want to add filters on there? Because you might have like 100 posts. So don't you want your users to easily find what they're searching for? Let's go and install the plugin. Go and click Add New, Upload Plugin, click JetSmartFilters, and then hit Open and Install. When you first go to JetSmartFilters, you're going to get a blank screen. Eventually, this is going to start to fill up with some of the filters that we're going to create. And let's just say you had 1,000 filters. You could even search for them using this facility at the top here. So you can now go, oh, I need to find a particular filter that's using a select feature, or you could search by name. If we go over to the settings, and again, this is pretty damn simple, just like JetEngine, you can now decide on where are your filters going to apply. So are you going to be using a JetEngine calendar? If not, you could get rid of that. Is it going to be applying to any WooCommerce items? Well, I'm not using that as well. Is it going to apply to an Elementor Pro loop grid? Well, we are using loop grid, so I would definitely use that. I mean, I would probably say leave loads of the Elementor Pro ones on, leave the JetEngine one over here, but I'm just going to get rid of the WooCommerce shortcode and the WooCommerce products because we're not using WooCommerce yet on here. The indexer settings should be activated for indexed filters. Basically, this means that every time you add an item, it kind of sorts them out within the backend tables. I'm also going to apply auto re-indexing. By the way, though, I will show you how, even though I've got that on auto, I like to click a button that says, redo the indexing as a force of habit, and I'll show you that when we start building out the filters. I'm also going to activate sessions down here because that's the post type we're touching at the moment. In terms of URL structure, I'm going to leave that as it is. The AJAX request, I'm going to leave that as default. Accessibility settings, it's not a bad idea to enable this, especially if you care about web accessibility. So when they hit the tab, they can actually go through the filters. If you don't have that on, the tab facility isn't going to be there, and I feel like you're losing a bit of, credibility there. Now let's go and create our first filter. Let's go back and revisit our custom post type. So JetEngine, post types, sessions. We've got items like session type. We've even got the trainer. We've got the level as well. And we also have the actual class type. The ones I'm going to go for are the class type, the session type, and the trainer. I'm not going to go for level, mainly because if I was to say you can pick beginner, intermediate, or advanced, if you think about it logically now as a business, okay, if someone goes and clicks beginner, they're not going to see the intermediate classes, and it's far better to say, well, you want to look at cardio, great, you click cardio, and if there are 7 classes for cardio, well, you go and pick and choose which one you want. So you got to think a little bit logically. Just because you may have a lot of glossary items, or you've got a checkbox facility for how they enter it, doesn't mean you have to have a filter for that. So think about what you want to let your end users search for. Let's start with a simple one, and we're going to go for the type over here. So let's go back over to our filters. We're going to click Add New, and I'm going to give this a name. And I'm going to click Checkbox. Now, this actually is quite important. If the type over here is Checkbox, and you go and pick Select, I have found they just don't work very well. Okay, sometimes you might get lucky and it works. I have found that you want to try and ensure like a one-to-one relationship with how it sits within your actual post type as your meta field and how you're going to build out the filter. And I did mention this if you followed the video. Plan out now. Are you maybe going to use this as a filter? And are you going to go for a checkbox, a select, a radio, or a range, or a date period? So we're going to go for checkbox. Then we need to select our data source. And the two obvious options are, do you go for a JetEngine glossary, because we are using a glossary for that type field, or do you go with a custom field? So just remember, was this using a glossary? And if you can't remember, just open it up and you will see that it is using a glossary. And then I'm going to select which glossary it is. Well, it's a class type one. Again, this just helps to keep things very consistent with how you're building, which is why I really like the glossary feature. Is the checkbox a meta field? Well, absolutely. We've got it over here as a meta field. So don't just assume that, oh, well, I've already gone and picked glossary. I don't need to do this. There's a few things you need to do. Now you need to add the query variable. And some people might look at this and go, well, what do they mean by that? It's just talking about the name, and the name here is type. So let's go and type that in. Literally kind of a bit of a ironic word there. Let's type in type. Anyway, there you go. And then we can decide on if we're going to have labels. Now, sometimes I will have a label, sometimes I won't. But I would say it's a good idea to get into a habit of just putting down some consistent wording over here. So I'm going to say, and I'm going to put the same down there for the active filter label as well. That's literally it. Let's go and hit update. Now, before we go and build out the other ones, let's actually now put this into practice. So I'm now going to go back over to where we have all filters. And we've already set this up to do the auto indexing. I'm still going to click apply indexer over there. Just a force of habit, okay? Whenever you change or create one, I would click that anyway, just to make sure it's definitely gone through. Let's now go over to our home page. I'm going to stick the filter above here. So I'm going to click on my container. I'm then going to go over to my widget list, and I am going to type filter. And what you will get is a load of filters that are relevant for JetEngine. Again, just like I've said about that one-to-one consistency, if your meta field was a checkbox and your filter is a checkbox, it makes pretty much sense that you're now going to add in a checkbox filter. So I'm now just going to click that, and it's currently gone to the bottom here. So I'm going to pick it up and put it out above all of the filters. Now, at the moment, you won't see anything. Don't worry yet, because we've not properly selected it. What I will say, though, about adding in filters is that I'm adding it at the top, because I'm going to have like a horizontal list. You could, if you want, have them stacked below one another. You could also have another container down here. So let's say your layout was 2 child containers. You might have a bigger container, which is, say, I don't know, 75%, which contains your loop grid or your JetEngine listings. And then the other 25% child container could be on the left or right, could be usually above or on the left or right. That is where you could stick your filters. So if you were using this with WooCommerce now or anything else, you could have them stacked like that. So you have a lot of flexibility in your layout. Let's go over to our filter, and I'm going to type in TY just to get type. First thing we're going to do, though, is make sure this filter applies to the Elementor Pro loop grid. So if you were using the JetEngine listings, you would have it apply there to JetEngine. If you were using a archive template and you weren't using the loop grid, so if you were using the standard old way of building out your blog archive template with Elementor, didn't say that very well, did I? But if you're using that, you would use the Elementor Pro archive. We are going to use the Elementor Pro loop because that's what we have down here. Remember, though, it's not going to modify this image over here because that is just a image. I quite like having the Ajax. If you do page reload, every time you pick an item, the page reloads, which, if you've got lots of filters, is deeply annoying. Apply on value change, or are we going to have an apply button? So let's go and show that, and you'll see the button now appear. There's pros and cons to having that. You know, I'm not totally against it, but sometimes I feel like that's an extra click. You might need to do that. Maybe they're going to be typing like you got a search box and it's free text almost. Then you kind of want to wait until they have finished before it applies. But you need to have a think about your user experience. Are we going to show the labels? That says class type. Now, I know you can't properly see it, so I'm just going to go over and change my style now. Let's go to the item setting. Let's go and set our color to be white. I'm not going to set any particular color for if you're hover or checked, but the facility is there for you. I'm going to make the background color be a full-on black so that you don't get a bit of the background image bleeding through. So we go back to the content tab and I now show the label. You can see it come in. I haven't made it bold or anything because I'm not going to have it there, but you can basically see how you could show it. Now, one thing that I haven't gone over is the actual layout of all of this. So if you wanted to have it stacked, that's what it currently does as a column, or you could make it be a line. Don't worry about how close it is at the moment because we will modify that. 20 from the top, and I'm going to go to child container 2, and I'm going to say give me 20 from the top there as well, so just so that everything is in line. So now we have our filter. Horizontal offset, basically spaced them out. So let's go and give it about 15 spacing there. You can align it to the middle or the right hand side. Left makes more sense. And you can clearly see the checkboxes are not in line with the wording. So back onto the style, go to the checkbox, and I'm now just going to add in 1 pixel just to make it more in line. I mean, you can see here, if you put it to 0, it's a bit too high. If you give it a 2, it's a bit too low. So 1, I mean, you could also do a 1.5 if you felt you needed to, but I think 1 there is pretty okay. Now, there are some other settings available for you. If you go down to additional setting, you've got search enabled, more or less. So let's say you've got loads of items now. There's 100. You could have a more or less item over there. So when you exceed 5, you're going to have text like more or less. Not always a good idea, but if you imagine you've got like tons of product categories, that could be a good idea for you. You could enable a drop down, which kind of slightly defeats the object of why we're doing the whole checkbox. Scroll enabled is more for when you get to like a mobile view. So they're able to like scroll through. Again, think very hard and carefully about your user experience. The good feature though is the indexer option. Apply indexer. So if we apply that, nothing happens. But that is important because when you do show counter, you will get numbers. Now, right now, you're looking at that and you're going to say, but it says 0. But we know I've got, I think, 2 for cardio or 2 for aerobics and 1 for spin cycling and maybe 1 or 2 for weight training. Why are they also showing 0? It's because we're still in the editor mode. And once you update and you go to preview or you're viewing on live, those numbers will become apparent. And I'm going to show you that. Now, there's a few more things we still need to do before we go and test it out. So click on the loop grid. You've got to do this to both of them because I have 2 here. But if you only had 1, you would obviously only do it once. You click on the loop grid and you got to say, is this filterable? And you have to say, yes, it is. It is filterable. Okay, if you don't do that, it ain't going to work with JetSmartFilters. And if you've built out your loop grid and then you go and add in your filters, this setting here won't be available until you go and use JetSmartFilters. So please bear that in mind. The other thing you need to do is go and click query. And down here where it says query ID, you need to add in JetSmartFilters with the hyphen in between. I'll do that again on the second loop grid. We go down to content. We say it is filterable. And on the query, we are going to say JetSmartFilters. This is really, really important. Then we go and hit update. And you can see there, we've got aerobics 3, cardio 2, spin cycling 1, weight training 1. Now, I'm not going to click any of them because I just wanted to show you how you could position it. What I would recommend you do, though, is that you only use filters like this when you actually have one big loop grid. If you have 2 separate loop grids, like what I've done here for this particular layout, it ain't going to work for you very well. Let me give you an example. I click aerobics, I get 1 and I get 1. Very strange that. It's because they're 2 separate loop grids. And one of them is applying an offset down here where it kind of doesn't show the other 2. So what's happening is you're not getting the fuller picture. So for the purpose of what we're going to do here, we're going to make a duplicate of that section. So that is now pushed down over here. We're going to get rid of this container. We're going to get rid of container number 2 as well. In fact, let me just get rid of that fully like that. So now when we view it, you can actually see we've got our 6 items, aerobics 3, you see aerobics, and we have aerobics down here. Weight training, we only have 1. So if I go and hit aerobics, it goes down to just those 3. And we still have cardio 1, spin cycling 0, weight training 0, because we have cardio over there. So if I was to go and click, say, cardio, you would still see them, but then it would also bring through the one that is just cardio. So it allows you to mix and match what you're looking at. And if I go and click weight training, it would actually bring it back in. So have a think again about your user experience, because some people might go, well, why did weight training come in? Because it says 0, but it's informing you that there are none visible yet because of what you've picked. You go and pick it in, it now appears. And if you want to bring them all back in, you can just like reset them in a way, take out your ticks, and they will now appear. And again, if we go and pick another one, like here we got 2 cardio, I go and click cardio, those 2 will appear, aerobics, and that's why we still have a 1 over there. That's a really cool way of doing your filters, but let's go and add in 2 more. Let's go back over to JetSmartFilters and let's hit add new. Now we already have done the class type. We're going to do trainer, which is a select box. And then we're also going to do session type, which is a checkbox. Let's just do the checkbox one again. So just so you get familiar with the steps, we're going to go and give this a title. It's a checkbox and the data source will be a JetEngine glossary. We go and pick session type over there. Is it a meta field? Yes, it is. Let's now go and get our query name ID, and it is session-type. Let's just copy that, pop that in as the query variable, and over here, I'm just going to get the field name that we currently have, and I'm going to say field label and active field filter label as well. So just double check everything is okay there. That is done. Let's update that. And before we go and add it in, we might as well just add in our third filter as well, which is going to be trainer. Now in this scenario, it's not a great one to use because we only have one trainer per class in a way, but imagine you had trainers that were covering multiple classes and you had your favorite trainer and you wanted to know what they do. So in this scenario, we're going to go for a select because it is a select. Remember, the trainer is a select over there and we can see the word is trainer. Let's just go and pick that up while we're there. This is also coming from a glossary as well. So again, we can pick it. But I do want to show you, what if it wasn't a glossary? What if we had a field that was actually a meta field and that's where we were filtering from? You would pick custom field and then over here, you would go and put in your placeholder like search or something. But down here where you have the custom field key, this is where you would go and pop in your name ID. So as long as you can get the name ID, which you can, it's always there in JetEngine, you can do this. But for now, we're just going to go with a glossary again. We're going to pick the glossary, which is the trainer. Now, you don't have to tick the checkbox meta field here because we're using a selector and we're already pulling from the glossary. However, if you were using a custom field, then you definitely want to make sure you go and pick that. But for the purpose of what I'm doing here, the JetEngine glossary, I can leave that unticked. We will hit update. Again, force of habit, go and hit your apply indexer. Rather than me adding in another checkbox, I'm just going to duplicate what we have. I'm then going to go over to where we have our select filter type. I'm going to delete that and I'm now going to type in ses to get a session type and you will now see those appear. Now we can modify this, okay? We could have them side by modifying the custom width of these because we are using row or wrap, or we could just separate them out a little bit and add in a bit of gap. Like that. In this scenario, this is where having the title isn't a bad idea. So if I was to go over here and now show the filter label, you will have session type appear. And I often find that if you are going to show the label, having them stacked like going down in a vertical looks better because I find that it sometimes doesn't look great with that. I am, for the purpose of this tutorial, not going to show the label, but you get the idea what it's doing. Remember though, just make sure that everything you've got in here, you're happy with Ajax value change. Are you going to have an apply button or not? I mean, over here again, it's all doing the indexing and I'm fine with that. Now let's go and add in our select filter. So I'm going to go here and type in filter, or I could have typed in select. We're going to go grab our selects and we'll drop that in. It's currently gone in between them, but I'm not bothered about that. I'm then going to type in tray to get trainer. This is for the loop grid. Remember to pick that Ajax value change, no apply button. We're going to go back over to our filters. We're going to go to where we've got trainer and down here where it has placeholder, let's change that to say select trainer like that. And you'll now see select trainer and you definitely want to do a bit of styling over here. I'm going to have a solid border type, but I am going to zero everything out. And I'm just going to have a one line at the bottom, just so that we have a line. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. I'm going to go back over to my select and I'm going to make the background be a black color like that. Well, you could, if you want, add a little bit of transparency. There's no harm in that. You know, so we could just make it be a little bit transparent, but not full on. I'm going to reduce my padding, but I will add some at the bottom. We'll have about 4 there. I'll go for 4 all the way around for the padding of the select. So we're styling this. And then I'm going to go and set the width of this to be a full width. We'll add in 10 at the top as well. Now I'm just going to rearrange this a little bit. So we're going to pick the select filter up and drop it below the checkbox like that. Let's just now have a look at how this looks on the preview. So when we now preview our page, we've got our items at the top. We've got our session types. Again, a label might have been a good idea over here. And we also have our select trainer. When you do click on it, you will get that little bit of a border around there, but you can modify that. But we have the select trainer. So if I was to now go and pick aerobics, I'll only see 3. I can see that all 3 of them on group, but they're also venue as well. So if I go and pick venue, you're still going to see the same 3. If I go to trainer, I can see it's Claire Hammer, Ingram Mulby, and Sarah Yao. But let's go and change that because it showed me all 5 trainers, even though it was only relevant to a few of them. So if you go back over for that particular one, and we have where it says if item empty, it's currently set to show for the indexer options, I'm going to set that to be hide. And this is where you could again have a bit of a think, because I think for checkboxes, it's not a bad idea to show them the options because you can pick more than one. Whereas for the select trainer, it's not a bad idea because it's a select to kind of limit it down. So let's go and update that and go back over to our preview. Let's again go and pick aerobics, and you can see we have those options. Doesn't matter if I pick group or venue because you're only ever going to have 3. But now in select trainer, we only have those names. And obviously you pick the person and it will go to the relevant one. Bear in mind though, if you do go and undo aerobics, because you went and picked in-grid, it will stay on in-grid unless you now go to select trainer and now they will all appear. But with Ajax filtering, it is actually really, really flexible. So that was JetSmartFilters. And yeah, I know there was quite a lot I covered off in there. And I could have gone at it at a quicker pace, but I wanted you to understand how, if you think about it in a methodical way, you can start to add filters in. Of course, please remember what I created before where I had 2 loop grids. Getting it to work well with one another isn't a great idea, so it works really good if you have one combined loop grid. But I hope this helps you out in understanding JetSmartFilters.